What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're taking a look at the Nike Romaleos 3 XD. Now, to start this off, I think a lot of people are confused as to why there's even an XD model. The XD stands for extra durability, and I think a lot of people are thinking these are going to be like brand new shoes, or they're like the Nike Romaleo 4s. They're not. They're just the mid-season update of the Nike Romaleos 3, and they're still called the Nike Romaleos 3, not 3.5 or anything, just Nike Romaleos 3 XD. And they created the extra durable versions to go along, obviously, with the Metcon 4 XD, which I did a review on, but to not only refresh the shoe, but correct kind of the mistakes that they made. And to be honest with you, I never personally had any issues with the durability of that shoe. But then again, I don't really use my shoes as much as most people will. Like, I cycle through a lot of shoes, and I don't really put the same kind of mileage into any one pair of shoes. But I was getting a ton of messages and comments regarding the durability of the original Nike Romaleo 3s. In some cases, they were falling apart within like a month of use. And it mainly happened at the tongue of the shoe. I have the black and gold here with me. These ones are actually just a little bit different than the normal Nike Romaleo 3s because of the strap, and I'll explain why that is a little bit later. But the tongue on these is the exact same one. It's a very flimsy tongue, and people would put their shoes on, pull on the tongue, and then boom, it would rip off. I never really saw a really jacked up pair until Janice came to do the review of the Legacy lifters and showed me hers, and they were just tore up. The tongue was ripped, the front toe box area was ripped, the heel was coming apart. They were just beat up, and it was only within like a year's worth of wear. So if you're paying $200 for a pair of shoes, you expect them to last a little bit longer than a year. Keep in mind that she only does weightlifting as well. Those weren't shoes that she wore during any kind of CrossFit workouts. But anyways, back to the Nike Romaleo 3's XD. The build quality and construction of this shoe is a lot better. I mean, if you just pick the shoe up, you pick the original shoe up, and you'll be able to tell the difference almost immediately. The upper is now a more robust, actually more pliable as well, synthetic leather material. It feels a lot like leather. It's probably a little bit less pliable than leather is, but it's a pretty dang close replica, and it feels way nicer than like the more like synthetic and plasticky upper that was a little bit more rigid on the original Nike Romaleos. The flexibility in the toe box is actually, in my opinion, it's a little bit better on the newer ones. The strap is also more beefed up. It looks the same in design, but it feels a lot better. The nylon strap that they're using has the Nike logo embossed into it. Just looks a lot nicer. It's got a little bit of synthetic leather on the pull tab right there. It still kind of looks like a seatbelt like the original Nike Romaleo 3s. The black and golds do not have it because there's this overlay on top of it, so you don't really see it as much. But yeah, it kind of still has that seatbelt look to it. The toe box of the updated shoe does not have the mesh openings like on the original Romaleo 3s. It's got holes instead, and then it's got those lines on top of it which are designed for flexibility. They're like the flex points in the toe box, and I think they actually work pretty well. That was another area with the original shoe that was plagued with durability issues, because this material was just a little bit too rigid, and it would just become undone from the mesh part inside of it. The actual back part and ankle collar of the shoe, pretty much the same thing. They don't feel very much different, aside from having the synthetic fabric all throughout the whole back area of the shoe around the ankle collar, whereas on the Nike Romaleo 3s, the original ones, there's kind of like this mesh area. It's actually just all synthetic on the XDs. But otherwise, the cushioning on the ankle collar feels exactly the same. The newer shoes, of course, still have flywire lacing. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then a 6th hole If you wanted to get a little bit more back pressure, you can lace lock it as well. I never had any issues with heel slip, so that's probably not something that I'm going to go and do. And now, the biggest area of improvement on the XDs is the tongue. It's way more padded. It's way more beefy. It puts the original tongue to shame. I mean, you could just see it from profile. It's just way more thick. It's way more comfortable on your foot than the original ones were. And you can rest assured that that is not going to rip on you if you're pulling these shoes into place. There is some straps inside that keep it in place, so you don't have to worry about it shifting around at all either. And I think just the tongue itself gives the shoe a much more clean and high quality look to it. The actual shoe just looks a lot nicer just because of the newer synthetic material. It just looks a little bit closer to leather. Another area that had issues with durability of the original Nike Romaleo 3s was the heel, and that wasn't something I personally ran into as much, but there were some people that had been asking me about if the XDs had an improved heel, and I'm going to say no. They're exactly the same. It's the same TPU heel. The heel height is the exact same, 0.75 inches. And the outsole material is exactly the same to me. It doesn't look any different. It still has the honeycomb shape. It's got that hole in the middle just to cut down on a little bit of weight. But otherwise, yeah, I don't see any differences between the outsole. My best advice for you is to try to not slide your feet around so much. That's the #1 killer of outsoles. So I'm not going to talk too much about the insoles of the shoe. The XDs do come with a soft training insert, and then they do come with a harder competition insert. But they're the exact same things on the original Romaleo 3s. The softer one, in my opinion, isn't all that much softer than the harder one, so I mainly just use that one. When I put the harder one in, it just makes the shoe fit a little bit more tight, and I'll go a little bit more into the sizing in just a little bit. But the weight of the shoe with the softer insole is a little bit more than on the original ones. The originals weighed in at 14.18 ounces for the soft insole, and then the Romaleo 3 XDs weighed in at 15.27 ounces with the soft insole, and then 17.67 with the harder insert. Obviously, you can expect that change of weight because the more robust build quality, the better materials, and then the beefier tongue. So I'm not surprised at it, but it is still one of the, if not the lightest weightlifting shoe. I think the Innovate Fastlift 335s are still probably lighter than these, but for a 0.75 inch heeled shoe, these are the lightest that you can get. Even with the harder inserts, they're still a very light weightlifting shoe. So for fit, I always wore my Nike Romaleos a half size down. Typically, I wear a 10 in my training shoes, and all of my weightlifting shoes, for the most part, I sized down by half. And I went with the standard size of my training shoes with the Nike Romaleo 3 XDs because I was just kind of worried that the extra material would make the shoe fit a little bit tighter, and I was right. These shoes fit now true to size to a training shoe. So from your original Nike Romaleo 2s or 3s, you're going to want to size half up to the XDs. If you were coming from legacy lifters, I would still recommend that you sized half up from whatever you were wearing there. The only shoe that I might say size the same is if you were coming from Adidas Lice Tongues or Addy Powers, because they fit a little bit on the smaller side. If you have Nanos or Metcons for reference, just size your Romaleo 3 XDs the exact same. For wide-footed people, these are not going to be the weightlifting shoe for you. If you have collapsed arches, you will not like these shoes. The toe box is going to be more narrow than pretty much all of the other weightlifting shoes. It fits a little bit more on par to Addy Powers, but there is a huge arch support on the Romaleo 3 XDs and the original Romaleos as well. So if you didn't like that about those, it hasn't changed here. stay away from these shoes. But otherwise, if you had a more narrow foot, you didn't mind that bit of arch support, these are probably the best weightlifting shoes as far as fit goes for a more narrow foot. So for flexibility and comfort, despite having the more thick feeling, robust feeling upper, I still think that these are still probably one of the most flexible weightlifting shoes out there. The toe box still flexes really well. Split jerks feel really comfortable to do in these, and I mean, if you really wanted to, you could use these for a CrossFit workout, though I would probably stay away from doing that in general. But I mean, I could see myself wearing these for something that had some heavy lifts, maybe some double unders. Definitely not running, maybe some box jumps, but mainly I'm going to stick to doing weightlifting movements in the Romaleo 3s. For comfort, they're weightlifting shoes. That's kind of a null point, so I never really talk about that when I do weightlifting shoe reviews. But I mean, for what it's worth, they're a decently comfortable weightlifting shoe if that's what you're going to be wearing throughout your time at the gym. I could see myself wearing these for a few hours without them being too uncomfortable. They breathe pretty well, so I never really worried about my feet getting too hot in them. But otherwise, yeah, comfort doesn't really matter too much with weightlifting shoes. So for stability, I never really thought the original Romaleo 3s were the absolute most rock solid, stable weightlifting shoes on the market compared to some of the other options out there. I still think that they are a definitely way more stable shoe than any trainer that you can get. But when you compare them to other weightlifting shoes, they're not the most stable, and that's mainly because they're just a little bit more narrow than other shoes. The grip on Romaleo 3s is very good as compared to the Romaleo 2s, which I thought had really, really bad grip, and compared to the Legacy lifters. But the sheer width of those two shoes make them both more stable than the Romaleo 3s. Not saying that these are not. They still have that TPU heel that's not going to compress on you or anything. So if you're just looking for a shoe to like squat or do ollie in, these are obviously going to be better than any kind of just normal training shoe. Another reason why the Romaleo 3s were never the most stable weightlifting shoes is because they're also one of the most lightweight ones. So if you had issues with moving your feet, I would still probably recommend getting these because it's just going to be a little bit easier to move your feet around because of the lighter weight. But if you were a technically sound weightlifter and you had no issues moving your feet, then I would probably take one of the heavier options as opposed to a lighter shoe. Of course, you can put the harder inserts into these and make them about 17 ounces, which makes them a little bit more in line with the Romaleo 2s, but the Legacies are still going to be far heavier at like 20 ounces. Lice tongues are about 17 ounces, so it's going to be the same with the heavy insert. And then like Antas are going to be far heavier. Those are like 20 something ounces, like 22 ounces. They're really heavy shoes, but they're also really, really stable shoes. And then like the Positions and the Velasas are just about the same weight as the Romaleo 3s with the harder insert. I mean, when it comes down to it, I've never lost a lift because of the stability of the shoe. They're still rock solid, but compared to something like the Legacy lifters that just have a wider platform, they're a lot heavier, and they also have two straps. That sometimes helps. These are going to be just a little bit less stable. The Romaleo XDs retail for $200, which is the standard going rate for weightlifting shoes. If you have a perfectly working pair of Romaleo 3s, I'm going to say that you do not have to upgrade to these. If those are in still good shape, don't worry about getting these. They're pretty much the same exact shoe, and you're not going to be getting any kind of benefit by getting the newer models unless your other ones were already tore up. If you were comparing these to the Legacy lifters, I would say if you had a more narrow foot and you needed something where your foot wasn't sliding around a whole lot inside of the shoe, because obviously that's going to be bad when you're weightlifting, then I'd go with the Romaleo 3 XDs. If you were coming from Addy Powers or you were looking for an Addy Power substitution or replacement, these are probably the best shoe to fill the void that is Addy Power. That is not really an available shoe anymore. I guess you can find them on some outlets that have just like dead stock, but otherwise Adidas doesn't really sell them anymore, and the new ones do not come out until June or so. Compared to Romaleo 2s, I personally have always preferred the Romaleo 3s over Romaleo 2s just because they fit my feet a little bit better and they just are a little bit more comfortable to me. I never honestly was a huge fan of Romaleo 2s. I think the grip of Romaleo 3s is better by far than on Romaleo 2s, but it's going to be a preferential thing, and if you had a wider foot, Romaleo 2s are still going to be better than 3s are. But if you're in the market for a pair of brand new weightlifting shoes, you had a narrow foot, I can't really think of anything better at this moment than the Romaleo 3 XDs. These are an excellent pair of weightlifting shoes. They're extremely flexible. They're very, very stable despite not being probably the most stable. They still are because they are weightlifting shoes. And in my opinion, they're probably the most aesthetic of the bunch. I think these are the best weightlifting shoes as far as looks go that you can get on the market right now. I think these are a good mid-season update. They're probably not essential if you have a working pair of normal Romaleo 3s, but I do think that this was a needed update because of all the woes that other people had with their original Romaleo 3s. If you guys have any questions about the Romaleo 3 XDs, feel free to leave them in the comment section, and as always guys, please hit that like button, subscribe, and thanks for watching.